This podcast has been brought to you by the UK Domain, a free resource to help every small business owner take advantage of online marketing.
Hi, I'm Sam from the UK Domain. I'll be bringing you this podcast along with Anna from smallbusiness.co.uk. Today's panel discussion is aimed at small business owners, sole traders, those who work for themselves, businesses of 1 to 10 people whose employees may work together or all work remotely perhaps. Maybe they work on their own using their own devices. Maybe you or they don't even use computers day to day, such as tradesmen, builders, childminders. We want to help you remain secure, as there's a high bounty for customer data these days. I know I myself have been subject to data breaches, credit card fraud, identity theft, and with online fraudsters now automating cyber attacks, it's those who are least protected that are often the most vulnerable. The UK Domain provides free, impartial and practical advice to business owners to enable them to start and grow their businesses online, and we noticed a worrying trend impacting businesses just like yours. So today we brought together a panel of experts to help you understand the risks, what the impact of a data breach could be, and what you could do to avoid your business being in this situation. Understanding the importance of cybersecurity as a small business, navigating through overwhelming legislation like GDPR and responsibilities associated with data protection and processing can be really hard and confusing, especially when you're juggling so many other aspects of your business at the same time. However, this lack of understanding around what's applicable to your businesses and not having a strong awareness of online weak spots means if a cyber breach were to happen or your data was to get hacked, the effect on your business could be monumental. So today our panel of experts are going to help us understand common cyber threats, how to protect important data, debunking GDPR and taking simple steps to strengthen your online security. So, introducing your panel. Today we have a fantastic lineup for you of industry experts. They are Kath Goulding. Kath has 19 years experience in the cybersecurity profession, having worked for both UK government and the private sector. A thought leader in her field, she frequently speaks at security and internet conferences and has provided articles and comments for multiple publications. Her career was profiled in the Financial Times and she's appeared on the BBC multiple times. Kath currently works as Chief Information Security Officer for Nominet UK, the internet company best known for running the .uk registry and therefore critical to internet operations in the UK. Kath is joined by Nicola Hartland, CEO and co-founder of iCAS. As a serial entrepreneur and fellow small business owner, Nicola brings a unique perspective. She set up iCAS when she was running a telemarketing agency and suddenly GDPR was brought into the equation. She found there was very little clear and concise information available to her as a small business owner, who would undoubtedly be impacted by the regulation, and saw a business opportunity. Nicola has previously been awarded the Role Model Award at the Women in Business Awards and has been a finalist in Entrepreneur of the Year and Business Person of the Year. Nicola also has her colleague Megan Kane with her today. Megan is a GDPR practitioner who has delivered educational GDPR-focused seminars across the UK for many brands including Barclays, Santander, Peninsula and Iris. As one of the youngest GDPR practitioners in Europe, and with a true grasp of the real-world application of the GDPR, Megan works with companies of all sizes to help deploy achievable GDPR strategies and targets. And last but definitely not least, we have Joseph Garbett with us today. Joseph is managing director of a firm local to us called Oxsec. They have a bold desire to make Oxfordshire the most cybersecurity county in the UK for small businesses. Joseph has a very unique talent though. By day, he is an entrepreneur working in the cyber and web field, a digital engineer who loves building platforms. But by night, he's an ethical hacker, helping tech businesses keeping their customers safe. I tried to do my best superhero voice there. Along with his businesses, Joseph tries to engage with as many people as possible through public speaking to raise awareness of the cybersecurity challenge we all face. When Joseph meets with clients to discuss their cybersecurity capabilities, he can demonstrate how hackers work to infiltrate the business's security infrastructure in real time, breaching potentially damaging customer data and even product inventory. So, without further ado, let's get started. So we're going to start off today by looking at some numbers. It's quite a staggering statistic. The UK small businesses are targeted with a whopping 65,000 attempted cyber attacks every day. But I wanted to take a look at what we mean when we say cyber attacks. There's many ways in which criminals can go about their malicious work today. Cybercrime is defined as any criminal activity that takes place in the cyberspace. And one of the earliest and the most common types of cybercrime activity is hacking. It involves stealing identities and important information, violating privacy, and committing fraud, amongst other things. The global cost of cybercrime is expected to hit $6 trillion by 2021, so this is quite a big deal. We conducted some research with a group of 513 small business owners, and we asked them a series of questions about their current level of protection against cyber threats and their knowledge and understanding of the General Data Protection Regulation. Now, this obviously is just a tiny data sample of the small businesses in the UK today. From the National Office of Statistics, last year there were 5.6 million micro businesses recorded in the UK. So that's businesses that are classified as those with 0 to 9 employees. That made up 54% of the businesses in the UK in 2019. Now, when you do the maths, at 65,000 cyber attacks attempted and aimed at small businesses a day in the UK, statistically over the course of a year, the majority of the micro businesses in the UK could fall victim to cybercrime. You know, whilst that is a very worrying statistic, there's some really simple, quick and effective things that you can do to minimise the risk to you and your business. Before we move on to the presenters telling us about those things, let's just have a quick look at the results of the survey. Over a third of the surveyed businesses said that they used a variation of the same password for all of their online systems and applications. I'm sure our panellists will delight in coming on to talk about why that could present a problem when they speak to us shortly. When we asked if they felt they had a good understanding of GDPR and how to manage and protect their customers' data, 85% of our respondents said that they had only a poor to moderate understanding. This just proves that whilst there's a lot of information out there, not all of it is either that much tailored towards small business audiences or relatable enough that you can actually understand how it applies to you as a small or micro business. When we asked if cybersecurity threats would apply to their business, almost a third of respondents said no, which was a real shock. Unfortunately, this is kind of one of the most worrying answers for me as I was interpreting the data, as you know, cyber criminals don't discriminate. This isn't something where someone is targeting an attack specifically at you. It's just a process that people go through to try and get data and to try and breach information. Whether you're using a laptop, a tablet, even a mobile phone to run your business, you are a potential target for cyber criminals. So no one, unfortunately, is excluded from vulnerability. Finally, when we asked if their current level of understanding around remaining GDPR compliant affects their business, almost half of the respondents said yes, it does. So with that, I'm going to hand back over to Anna, who's going to talk to Nicola Hartland from ICAS about her journey as a small business owner and the most typical issues she comes across when working with small businesses to ensure they're compliant with data protection regulations.
Great, thank you, Sam. Okay, hi, Nicola.
Hello there.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
Great. Okay, so as Sam just mentioned, we heard a little bit about how ICAS came about in the intro. So if you could tell us a little bit more about that and what it was like setting up a business, especially one around GDPR, which at the time was new and timely. So yeah, tell us what it was like setting up the business.
Okay, I mean, I think it's quite ironic that I'm sitting on a panel of data protection specialists, but my background wasn't actually in data protection. I was a small business. There was about 10 of us at the time, and I was running a telemarketing company, which, as you can imagine, processes and held lots of personal information of individuals, first names, last names, email address, telephone numbers. And I can remember when I first heard about GDPR, the first thing I did as a business owner was Google, what is GDPR? And I think, like most business owners in the country, they were probably more confused after Googling what is GDPR than when they first found out about it. I found that the information available to me, there was lots of conflicts in what people should be doing. There was misguided kind of information and the processes you should implement. But as a business owner, I take my responsibilities very, very seriously in terms of my obligation to HR, HMRC, etc. And data protection is a massive part of running a company. So I was keen to find a solution. But from speaking to a lot of my clients, they were facing the same problem. And all I could see was a few options here. One, hiring consultants at £1,000 a day to come in and fully tell us that we weren't compliant and we had to do a series of activities. Well, one word for a small business is cash flow. Two, send my my team on training courses. Again, that's very costly. And as a small business, we were busy, fee earning to keep our lights on and keep the business keep serve all our contracts. Or three, do nothing, which was never going to end well. So I was feeling very anxious about this. I knew I had to do something, but I couldn't find a solution that met what I needed as a small business owner. And I can remember actually that during that week of research, I'd ended up going up to Scotland for the weekend. And it really winded me up all the way, all the journey. I was thinking, like, what can I do? This is really bothering me. I need to get it sorted next week. And literally, that was on the Friday. And on the Saturday, I can remember waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning, almost like a bolt out of the blue, and I'd had an idea. It was a business idea. And I wanted to create a company that could solve the problems of the GDPR for the 5.6 million SMEs in the country, like me, that were facing that problem.
Going into more practical examples, tell us a bit more about how GDPR rules apply to specific businesses. So say, let's start with a personal trainer.
Well, I think actually the personal trainers are very interesting because we've actually been doing quite a lot of work in conjunction with my PT Hub. And actually, if you take a personal trainer, for example, whether they're self-employed or whether they're hired by a gym, if you think about the data that they actually have access to, a lot of it done via text message as well between them and their clients. So they've got access to height, they've got access to, age, maybe any health problems. But the main key here, I think, for personal trainers is how many before and after underwear shots do we all see on social media people promoting, look at this dramatic weight loss. However, not everybody signs up to have that plastered over social media. I mean, I, for one, would be absolutely mortified if my personal trainer did that. And, that's very, it's hugely sensitive information. And if you think, this is where a lot of kind of personal trainers are becoming unstuck, because if they leave that phone out, if they lose their phone, if it's not locked, if they haven't taken the right measures to protect that data, that could not only blow up in a very big data breach if that information ends up in the public domain, but it's also it's reputational damage. It's not just fines that people need to worry about, or the ICO turning up. It's that reputational damage. And with social media these days, if something like that happens, it can have a severe impact on your business. The measures need to be taken in place to protect that data. Right.
Just quickly, what about, say, a cafe owner?
I mean, the crazy thing about this, every single business applies. So if, say, you took a cafe owner, well, to be honest with you, they aren't really processing information from their customers apart from taking card payments. But they do, if they employ staff, they have to treat that. That is personal data. So people that employ staff or have a supply chain, that is classed as personal data, because it's not just the business name, for example, you're dealing with, that will have details of key contacts within that organization, email addresses, etc. But for your staff, you have an obligation to protect their data and make sure your systems are secure. If that staff member leaves, there needs to be retention policies in place. So, you need to hang on to records for a certain number of years for HMRC, but then you need to have a retention policy for removing their data after a certain number of, say, months, 6 months, 12 months, depending on what your policy is. But you have to have those procedures and measures in place, even though you might not think, yes, but I'm not taking the details of Joe Bloggs that's just ordered a latte this morning. That's fine, but you have people that you employ that you hold personal details to. So I think it's making it very, very clear to businesses that what is actually processing personal data? What does that mean? And I say to a lot of my customers, well, if you have clients, if you have a supply chain and you have employees, you are processing a personal data in one format or another.
Great. And on that, so we hear some instances of big companies making claims against businesses that are related to GDPR. What about individuals who file claims? What kind of claims are these typically?
Yeah, so a lot of companies don't know, sort of small businesses in particular, know that individuals can personally claim. So a lot of people think, well, I'm just a little hairdresser. There's only 5 of us. Is the ICO really going to turn up and give me a £20 million fine? Probably not. I wouldn't think the breach would be severe enough. But that's not where the risk lies. It's not against the big boys coming in with a £20 million fine. That's not really going to happen. It's people personally claiming. So, for example, if I go back to Mr. PT and with the before and after shot of his client that really did not want them on Facebook or what have you, if for any reason that client's data was compromised, she could go to a solicitor, any solicitor, and say that because her personal data was not handled correctly, she has been traumatized. She is distressed. And because of that, she requires compensation. And that is grounds for obtaining compensation if you could be proved to mistreating that information.
Yeah. And you say people are confused and they're also a little bit wary, especially when it comes to marketing. They don't want to inadvertently flout any rules. What advice would you give to small business owners to soothe those worries if they want to go into marketing there?
Yeah, I mean, I think when GDPR first came into play, there was businesses all over the country deleting all of their databases, just deleting everything because they thought they could never speak to everybody again. And that's not the case. You can, but it needs to be carried out underneath a lawful basis. Our biggest advice would be to make sure the database that you have, you have legitimately. So it's not held with lots and lots of contacts that you've acquired from old databases or people that you haven't spoke to for years and years and years. You need to be contacting them if they've submitted an interest in your business or you've done business with them in the past, given a certain timeline, and make sure there's actually a proper reason for them taking an interest in your business. Most of that actually falls under legitimate interest, but you need to be careful of the data that you do hold. Secondly, once you establish that your database is accurate, when you reach out and you market to them, make sure that you have an opt-out option. That's really important. You need to give them the opportunity to opt out and be removed from your database. And I think another main point on that is if you don't have a privacy policy, get a privacy policy in place. And that basically is a statement from your company saying how your data is processed, how you handle personal data, whether it's marketing collateral, whether it's customers, whether it's staff. Have that and always have a link on any collateral that you send out to the privacy policy so people can check how you are actually handling data. So as a starting point, that would be, there is ways out there that means you can still market. You don't have to be afraid of, shutting the doors and not talking to anybody, hoping all the inquiries are going to flood in.
Great. Well, thanks for that, Nicola. Now we are going to move on to Joseph.
Hello, everybody. Obviously, I'm Joseph, Director of OXEC and Garbot. We are digital engineers. I am formerly a web developer for Money Saving Expert and was there during the acquisition from Money Supermarket. And, I've got a skill which is building websites and platforms. But on the flip side of that, being able to build platforms also means I know how to reverse engineer them, which can also be viewed as reverse engineering and or hacking. So I work with a lot of larger organizations to help find problems. I seem to have specialized in finance, not intentionally, but I've invented a lot of money, which is great, and then had it taken straight back off me. But it's good that I find it and have a good relationship with the people I work with to stop people who don't have good intentions to do so. And I also try and make sure that the average Joe, as it were, can do the best they can to protect themselves.
You spoke a little bit about hackers. So as you're an ethical hacker, say you have somebody a malicious hacker looking at a small business website, what kind
Yep.
of vulnerabilities are they looking for, and how would they exploit them?
Okay, so there are a number of things, and it's when I say these, they're going to be so easy. Usually, the first thing with small businesses is they have one email address, which is usually on their website at the footer saying email us info at business name or blah 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 at gmail.com or whatever. Usually, that's their sole email address. And there's a few websites out there that you can paste email addresses in, and it will pull out what breaches you've been part of. And with a bit more extensive Googling, you can actually then go and find the breach. They're there to be consumed. They're there to be viewed for all. You just have to know where to look. That's the first thing. So that's one way people do simple targeted hacking. Look for the scouting information. The second way is, and everybody will know this, is the chain messages on social media. So have you seen those things where people say, what's your favorite pet? Can you name your top best friends? What's your favorite car? Guess what? They're all the security questions on your account. And guess what you've gone and done? Post on social media. And then because you've tagged all your friends, they will then fit it all in. And then you start to build up a profile of you and the network and everybody in there and all of your favorite things like your pet, your car, your friends, and all the other quirky questions that are in there. When you last met them, what's your anniversary? I'm pretty sure quite a few people are going, "Oh my God, I resonate with that." So that's the second one, and then the third one is when at the beginning I mentioned the website that you can paste your email address in to see if you've been breached. That's one part of it, but the second part is that people use the same password everywhere, and I think that's something you guys touched on earlier. It's like using the same lock for your house everywhere you go, and you have one key. And if I clone that key, I get access to all the things you have access to. If I could give one piece of advice to everybody, stop using the same password, please. It would stop so many problems in one go. It really would.
Great. And just to move on quickly,
Sure.
so it's undoubted that small businesses need to invest in their cybersecurity. What are the key areas that you think that small businesses should be investing in as a priority?
A policy around passwords, even if you're on your own. Things like when people share passwords between themselves and third parties, such as you might be an agency and you might have a customer that you supply a service to, or stop having your customer send you passwords over emails. Emails aren't encrypted unless you have the encryption add-on, which you have to pay for, or there's a very small allowance for it. If you use a free password manager, there's quite a few out there, so just Google them. You can actually securely send login details with other people, and then you can control who has access to it. Because if you cease a relationship, you remove that access, and guess what? They no longer have access to your passwords. Whereas if you send it in an email, it lives in their inbox forever, and you probably will never change that password unless the platform that it's for have a password policy to make you change it, which none of them ever do. So yeah,
And
that's
quickly, just to round off, how should
sure.
small businesses go about online training around cybersecurity?
So there are a few basic things. There's a government certification a business can put themselves through, Cyber Essentials. There are a number of YouTube 101s for businesses, for individuals. Um, but it really does boil down to stop using the same password. If you can have a VPN, use one. If you're on a network you don't know, and that's really outside work, home, and cellular. Cellular is still quite secure, but you have to make sure you are connecting to cellular. But otherwise, don't use public Wi-Fi without a VPN. I have a friend who went to LAX, connected his laptop to the airport Wi-Fi. It turns out it was someone running what's called a pineapple device, and they stole his business overnight, and he lost a $2.5 million business in 14 hours, all because he didn't buy a $14.99 a month VPN. So that sounds like a worthwhile investment.
And on that
So
sobering note, thank you, Joseph. We're going to move on to Megan. Okay,
yes,
Hi.
so hi. So you're a GDPR practitioner with ICAS, and you've worked with some pretty big companies. So they, between big businesses and small businesses, they handle GDPR regulations differently and need to adhere to different things. So how does small business differ in what it needs to pay attention to in terms of GDPR?
So usually you'll find that the main sort of difference between small businesses and big businesses are generally big businesses either have at least one person or a team of people to look at data security and data protection, and basically part of their day-to-day job is talking about data protection and looking at all the different aspects of the job. With small businesses, they're generally wearing many hats as well as looking at data protection and data security. So they're tending to have to juggle many different things at the same time. They might be the head of HR, or they can be doing HR, they can be doing admin, and they've sort of got a lot of other things on their plate. So what you'll find is usually it's someone that doesn't have the time and maybe not necessarily the skill set to be able to fully commit to data protection responsibilities in small businesses. And it's a shame really, because it is something, data protection is something that really should be part of your bread and butter for running a business, but certainly if you don't have the time or the knowledge to be able to like dedicate to that 100%, then it can often seem like quite a big and daunting task.
And because of having to handle so many things, what are the more common mistakes that small business owners tend to make?
So, I mean, so 88% of data breaches are down to human error. And like I said, with small businesses generally, because they've got more than one thing to look at, they're more likely to make mistakes, especially now where a lot of people are having to work from home. There's so many distractions as well due to this sort of pandemic and the current situation that we're in. So it can be things as simple as sending an email that's got personal data in it to the wrong person, sending a file that isn't locked, or sending a file over that's got the password in the email to get access to it. And it's just very, very easy, especially if people aren't actually working and functioning off of secure networks, for hackers to come in and take that information. It can be not BCC in an email properly, so that they're sending an email out to their whole database, their customer base, and everybody automatically has access to that, and that information's been sent to them, and they can then pull down all that information. It almost feels like stating the obvious, because we're all aware that people send emails to the wrong people, and sometimes information is sent or information shared incorrectly, but these tend to be the most common mistakes. We had a client that was so paranoid and so worried about adhering to this subject access request, because they're a small business and they don't have the time or the expertise to really look at subject access requests. They looked at the ICO website very quickly and went, right, okay, I need to give them absolutely everything that has their name attached to that. One, you don't. But also two, they were so worried and so concerned with getting that information over to them within the deadline as quickly as they could. They then resulted in having a data breach, because they sent them all the information that had their name in it, as well as other people's names. So it's more focused on the piece, the awareness piece, where they're just not taking a second thought. They're not taking that minute to think, am I doing this correctly? Who is this going to affect, and how is it going to affect them?
And for people who are still a bit lax about their data security, or they're a bit more skeptical as to why they should take more precautions, what would you say, and why is data security so important?
It definitely comes down to reputation. So because at ICAT, and that's basically sort of echoing what Nicola had mentioned earlier, because at ICAS we predominantly do deal with small to medium businesses, and we do deal with a lot of sole traders, or just sort of limited companies, one person limited companies. The reason they've got to take it so seriously is their reputation, it's their brand, it's their company name. The ICO aren't going to show up and ask them for £20 million. It's not feasible. For a company that turns over £500,000 a year, they're not going to turn around and ask for £20 million. It's just not going to happen. But the power of social media these days is absolutely crazy. So all it takes is for one person to put a tweet out there, put a post on social media, it gets shared, it gets liked, it gets retweeted. It's their reputation. Small businesses in today's world, there's so much competition and everything's so competitive as it is. You want to be a leader out there. You want your customers, your suppliers, your employees to be comfortable and confident in you, that you're able to handle their information securely and professionally. So it's definitely, you've got the same way that you want to provide a good service, you've got great SLAs in place, you're dealing with all your customer queries to the highest possible standard that you could, you're giving a great haircut, you're giving a great wax, like you're giving a great service for your personal trainers, you're getting your clients fit. Everything that you're doing to make your business succeed and make you one of the key leaders out there and the best in your business also contribute, or data protection also contributes to that. You want to get your clients in good shape. You want to be giving them a great service so that they recommend you to other people. If you've got a data breach, or you can't handle subject access requests and the like within the sort of the required basis that you're meant to under the GDPR and under the relative legislation, they're not going to have that confidence in you, and they're not going to recommend you on to people. So this has got to be something that basically what we try and reinforce is that this is taken into people's consideration every day, and data protection is part of the bread and butter of what they're doing.
Great, perfect. Thank you. And the last up, we have Kath, and we're going to come to you for some practical tips. Tell us a bit more about some cybersecurity tips. Let's start around passwords. As we've seen, most people are using the variation of the same one throughout everything they use.
Yeah, passwords. Obviously, Joseph's talked about this, and I should start off by giving an apology on behalf of the security industry, because I think for the last 20 years we've got it completely wrong. When you go to a new site, you have to create a password. They usually say it needs to be 8 characters long, and it needs to have complexity in it, capital letters, numbers, and characters. And you put that in, and then you go to another site and you're not supposed to use the same one. Now, to remember that kind of complexity over, we all have dozens, if not hundreds of accounts nowadays, you just can't remember them. So my top tip, Joseph said it already, is to use a password manager. There's lots of them free out there. And what it means is it's a bit like your bookmarks that you have in your browser. It will remember them all for you. So it's like a vault. And basically, you just need to remember one password for that vault. And you want to make that really secure, obviously. So for those passwords that you want to remember, that you have to keep putting in, and obviously for your password vault, you want to make it really memorable. And so, contrary to that advice where it should be 8 characters, my recommendation, my tip is to say make it longer. So make it minimum 14 characters long. So, and then you don't have to put complexity into it. If you want to understand why, it's pretty mathematical, but just Google password strength table and you can see lots of images that will tell you how long it would take to crack your password. And if you follow that kind of 8 characters with complexity, it would take 57 days for a hacker to crack, which is quite a long time. But, if they were really motivated, they want to do it. If you make it 14 characters long, but it's something memorable like, I love shiny shoes, it would take them 8,000 years to crack. And that's a hell of a lot more memorable than something that's 8 characters. So that's how I would recommend people handle passwords. And then they're all in your vault. You never need to think about them again. You go to a new site and it will just ask you if you want to put it into your vault. So it will make life easier for you as well as more secure.
Great. And how about some more quick fire tips around things like encryption and patching and things like removable media, say USB sticks?
Yeah, sure. So I've got, including passwords, I've got 8 top tips. So passwords is my number 1. And in at number 2 is patching, like you say. And this is about making sure you have the latest versions of your software. So don't be using Windows XP anymore. Don't be using Windows 7. They don't have security patches that are automatically installed. You need to make sure that happens. There are lots of automated malware out there. We can see them flying about the internet. So even if you think you're not a target, these botnets and malware just circulate the internet trying to find a vulnerable host. And if you're running XP or something that's not supported anymore, then it could find a vulnerability, get into your system and get your data, even if they're not interested in you, but then they might just sell it on the dark web. So yeah, make sure you run the latest operating systems and latest software, whether that's Office or whatever databases you're using, and keep it updated. And then number 3 is about encryption. So it's about thinking, what are your crown jewels? So what is the data that you really need to protect? And this relates to GDPR. You know, it could be your customer data, or it could be like your secret recipe. You know, you might be producing some secret sauce that you're selling to supermarkets. And that is your intellectual property that you want to absolutely keep. So those files you want to encrypt, and you can either do it by encrypting your entire laptop or computer. If you're using Windows, there's something called BitLocker that will just encrypt the entire thing. So if you lost your laptop or it got stolen, then a hacker could try and get the data off it. But if it's encrypted, it will be virtually impossible to get off it. So BitLocker encrypts the entire computer that you've got. Or if you don't want to do that because you might be worried about it or it's slowing up, then you can password protect individual files, which is a lot more secure than it used to be, and that will encrypt them. And at number 4 is about using the cloud. So, you might use services in the cloud to help you with your small business, whether, that's your marketing information, the kind of Salesforce type solutions out there. You might think, oh yeah, I'm all protected, my data's in the cloud, it's fine. It may not necessarily be so. So you want to make sure that the cloud service that you're running is configured properly. And at the very basic, that means, again, passwords, and do use two-factor authentication in whatever case you can. If it comes with it, then do apply it. If you're not sure about what to look for, then you can get somebody in to help you look at the configuration, or there are tools out there. But don't just think that any service that I buy out the box is going to be secure. You just want to double check that it's fine. And like I say, at the very least, the credentials. Number 5 has already been talked about. That's shared Wi-Fi. Be careful about Wi-Fi hotspots and things, and use a VPN where you can. Number 6 is your kind of USB sticks. If you're saving data onto media like that, then protect that in the same way. You might want to encrypt it, and obviously don't lose them. And if ever you see them hanging around, maybe on a train or in a car park, don't just pick it up and plug it in and see what it is, because that's a common attack technique. You have to be careful with media like that. Number 7, this is an interesting one. This is about backing up your data. So you might have heard of ransomware. There was the big WannaCry incident that hit the NHS, things like CryptoLocker. This is where your computer might be infected malware, and it basically encrypts your whole drive, but you don't have the key. The bad guys have the key, and they hold you to ransom. They say, we're not going to unencrypt your data unless you give us X million pounds or whatever. And unfortunately, this is really exponentially growing because so many businesses need their data. So they end up paying the ransom because they've got no backups of their data. Now, if you have a good backup of your data, you can just kind of go, fine, I don't really care about that computer because I can rebuild it from scratch and I have the backup, my essential data, so I can keep running my business. But unfortunately, and it's interesting, just this week, you may have heard of Travelex, the foreign currency exchange shop. They were done by ransomware, and interestingly, just this week, they have paid. Obviously, it's been buried. It would have been headline news, but with everything else that's going on, it's sort of gone under the radar. But they ended up paying $2.3 million to get their data back. So yeah, backups, it's boring, but it's really important, and it can be really easy, whether it's just like, you can use a USB stick or buy a bit of a cloud service, but make sure you have a copy of your data and it's separated. So it doesn't, if things get encrypted, you don't want your backups getting encrypted too. And then lastly, and it has been touched upon, but it's awareness. And I think, everybody attending this webinar is excellent because hopefully your awareness has has increased, but your colleagues and your supply chain and your customers, it's all about awareness. And as it's previously been pointed out as well, this should be part of your brand, making sure that you are not just secure, it's about trust. And so if you build up that awareness both internally in your company but also as part of your brand, then it would be really beneficial. So there's my top 8 tips.
Fabulous. Thank you so much for that, and I hope everybody has found everything useful. Thank you all.
This podcast has been brought to you by the UK Domain, a free resource to help every small business owner take advantage of online marketing.